picturesque city of Leyden, known for its timeless beauty and cultural richness, was shattered by a crime of incomprehensible brutality as it became famous for something far more intriguing than the cobblestone streets and historic canals. It was May of 1991 when a chilling crime sent shockwaves through the tranquil community as a sinister plot consumed an unsuspecting soul, her life extinguished by the stroke of a pen. As the investigators went through the clues and pieced together fragments of evidence, there was one question that loomed large among the general public as well as the law and order department. Who wielded the pen of death? So, let's go through these pieces, gluing them together and bringing up a terrorizing story once again, 3 decades later. It was a chilly evening on May 26, 1991, when a 20-year-old Jim decided to visit his mother, Mary's house at Witt Rosenstraat in Leyden, as he did every Sunday to have dinner with her. Jim, hoping to meet his mother, arrived at her house at 6:10 p.m. and as soon as he opened the door, he was met with a daunting silence, which had been relatively rare. As he snuck into the house and proceeded towards the back room, he saw something horrifying that startled him completely. Jim saw his mother, lifeless, lying face down on the floor, and instantly called the police, as he had already sensed the danger and his helplessness in the situation. The police conducted a thorough investigation as soon as they arrived, examining the surroundings of the body. One thing that puzzled them was an insignificant amount of blood under the woman's head despite no apparent injury. However, as soon as the coroner inspected her face closely, he saw her right eye swollen and injured, which did not reveal anything except for the fact that the woman had not died of natural causes. So, for further investigation, the body was sent for an autopsy the next day to forensic laboratory in Rijswijk, which resulted in some pretty shocking discoveries. The autopsy revealed Bics black ball pen penetrated the head diagonally through the right eye, went through her right orbit into her sinus, her brain, and ended up in the lower left. Therefore, it was concluded that the victim lost consciousness instantly before dying within the next 30 minutes. The police concluded that the victim had been killed on the evening of May 25, 1991, while she was taking her usual post-dinner nap at her home on Leyden's Witt Rosenstraat. The assailant, who was familiar with her routine, surprised her by stabbing her in the eye, causing her to fall into a coma within seconds, ultimately leading to her death 15 minutes later. The police believe that the murderer likely used a key to enter the house, and the attack seemed deliberate, ruling out robbery or sexual assault as motives since valuable items remained untouched. They also suspected the perpetrator to be a family member or someone closely associated with them, given the intimate nature of the crime and access to a key. But there could have been a mishap, perhaps an accident or something, right? That question puzzled the police and those who wondered how the pen got there. Was it an accident? Was it suicide? Was it murder? The forensic pathologist's report indicated a stab wound, prompting detectives to launch an extensive investigation into the incident at Witt Rosenstraat. The mention of foul play suggested that a crime occurred, as everybody rejected the possibility that Mary, who wore Birkenstock sandals, simply tripped over a loose rug while holding a pen. There was uncertainty about the source of the Bic ballpoint pen, with no traces of black ink discovered in the house. Moreover, the victim's sister disclosed that Mary never used a black ballpoint pen, which also revealed Mary's cautious nature against carrying sharp objects. My sister would never walk around with a ballpoint pen in her hand. Besides, she never wrote with a ballpoint pen. As the investigations continued, the detectives began to seek out who Mary was, what her daily routines were, what her family dynamics were, and what her conflicts were. Consequently, it was revealed that Mary de Meijere, wife of Rob Terwiel and mother of 3, a son and 2 daughters, worked at an educational institution in Leidschendam. Her husband was a professor of theoretical physics at Leiden University, known for her extensive social circle. Mary had been actively involved in the children's theater group Tierlantien for many years. It was further revealed that Mary was going through a collapse of her marital life, which led to the divorce proceedings that had been going on during the time of Mary's death. This weakened relationship between Mary and Rob narrowed down the police's suspicion of Rob, who, as a physicist, was presumed to have the potential knowledge to commit a discreet murder using a ballpoint pen. Moreover, some anonymous friends of Mary wrote to the Truro newspaper, expressing concerns about her troubled marriage and her fear of her husband, and indicated that she had been apprehensive about potential harm coming to her. However, the theory of Rob being the culprit was instantly shot down as he had a verified alibi for the weekend of Mary's demise. Despite Rob's alibi, the investigators were keen on their theory of this being an inside job since there were no signs of forced entry in the house, which suggested that the perpetrator either had access through a key or was let in by Mary herself. The police and the Public Prosecution Service, OM, also questioned the plausibility of a pen penetrating deeply into the brain through an accidental fall. However, one thing that bothered the investigators was the knowledge of the specific cause of Mary's death, a pen to the head, which her family had possessed before this information was disclosed to the public by detectives. Consequently, it was speculated that someone in the family had attempted to stage the incident to resemble a brain hemorrhage, possibly aiming for the perfect crime. During the Ombudsman's investigation, it was revealed that the authorities made several errors. For instance, family members were under the impression that they were being interviewed as witnesses when, in reality, they were considered suspects. Additionally, the police rashly disclosed to the media that a murder investigation had been underway despite findings by Professor J. Verst, an ophthalmology expert from Groningen, suggesting that the incident may have been an accident. According to Professor Verst, the woman fell holding a pen, resulting in the pen piercing her eye upon impact with the ground. While this scenario may seem highly unlikely, he explained that it was plausible and demonstrated it using a pen and a model skull. Furthermore, he asserted that deliberate penetration of the eye with a pen had unlikely occurred without some form of intoxication. However, there were no traces of intoxicants discovered in this case. Despite thorough investigations into the neighborhood, backgrounds, alibis, and other factors, sufficient evidence to proceed with the case in court was not found, which led to the case going cold in August 1992. However, a breakthrough in the case occurred just 4 years later, in January of 1996, when Jim's therapist, breaking her obligations to keep privacy between her and her client, revealed the culprit of the murder for good. Jim had been seeing a psychologist since March 1993 after being referred by his family doctor. He was experiencing mental distress after discovering his mother's death at the age of 20, and the suspicions and the publicity surrounding the case had further made his condition worse. Jim's therapist revealed that Jim had confessed to killing his mother by shooting a ballpoint pen through her eye using a crossbow, and that it might have happened once again due to his diagnosed personality disorder. It must have been about the 6th session when Jim told me he wanted to say something, but he was afraid. She further revealed it to the investigators. He asked if I had professional secrecy. In a subsequent session, it was again brought up that he was troubled by something he might be better off talking about. She revealed that Jim finally mustered up the courage to reveal what he had been hiding for so long in one of the sessions. That my mommy is dead is because of me. I then asked if he had planned his mother's death. He said yes, and told me that he had killed his mother with a small crossbow. You can shoot objects with it. She also claimed that Jim had shared with her that he conceived the idea because his mother had cautioned him as a child against carrying sharp objects. Following this, the therapist inquired about Jim's actions after the alleged murder of his mother. He said he had gone home, watched TV, and slept. However, on the other hand, the Association of Behavior Therapists came out. It highlighted their sets of rules and claimed that during rational emotive therapy treatment, RET, a distinction should be made between psychological insights gained in therapy and legal realities. They argued that it is often cautioned that what emerges during therapy sessions may not necessarily reflect the truth, as sessions usually involve the expression of vivid fantasies. Supporting these claims, even esteemed figures like Professor R.D. Extra from Leiden's psychology department suggested that Jim's confession was just a product of fantasy or self-accusation. Consequently, aside from the main case, another new debate made its way into the news as there were serious questions over whether the therapist was justified in reporting Jim's statement to the police or not, given the psychologist's duty of confidentiality. The chairperson of the Advisory Board for Professional Ethics, Rabez C. Cohen, also spoke up regarding the ongoing issue, revealing that psychologists are only permitted to breach confidentiality in exceptional circumstances, such as to prevent imminent harm. Despite the ongoing debate about true ethical codes of conduct, Jim's therapist chose not to provide input on the case and remained silent. However, based on her statements to the police and examining magistrate, it was clear that she reported Jim to the authorities due to observing a parallel between Jim's feelings toward his mother and his behavior towards his girlfriend. Additionally, her account was supported by various circumstantial pieces of evidence provided by other witnesses, as many of them testified that Jim had discussed planning the perfect murder with a ballpoint pen among friends in high school. One such witness was from a janitor at the Stedelijk Gymnasium in Leiden, Jim's alma mater, who initially believed that the police had resolved the case. However, upon learning from the newspaper that the investigation had reached a dead end, he approached the authorities and testified against Jim, revealing that he overheard Jim and a group of students discussing the perfect murder. However, Jim had prior experience with crossbows as a member of a shooting club and had purchased crossbow arrows in the past, and he also had information about the lethality of shooting through the eye with a crossbow. Moreover, police investigations revealed inconsistencies in Jim's alibi for the night of his mother's death on January 25, 1991. However, there still existed a dispute between the professionals arguing whether it was an accident or a murder. In the investigation regarding how the ballpoint pen came to be lodged in the victim's head, 5 experts participated, including 2 pathologists who refrained from offering opinions on the matter of penetration, 2 ophthalmologists, and a forensic physician. The latter 3 experts asserted that the incident was likely accidental and refused to believe that it was a plotted murder. Out of many who had strong opinions regarding the case, there was Professor Wurst from Groningen, who had initially concluded that the pen could have only entered the head through a fall. However, he later acknowledged that he had not considered the possibility of a crossbow being involved, but he still deemed it highly unlikely. There was also the forensic physician Cohen, who promptly concluded that the victim's demise was accidental and was upset upon discovering through the trio that the family had initially been under suspicion of murder. "This is pure rudeness from the police." Cohen also claimed that a person who falls reflexively grips whatever they are holding at the moment, assuming they can stop the fall. Not only the 5 experts who assessed the case, but also another specialist, Jay Snook, a neurologist from Groningen, reviewed the file and affirmed that the injury inflicted clearly indicated an accident. The examination revealed that the pen pierced the woman's upper eyelid, pointing to her eyes, which were likely closed, and then entered the orbital roof. He claimed that the trajectory of the pen, from the bottom to the top, aligned with what would be expected after a fall. Jim, on the other hand, vehemently denied committing the murder of his mother that evening, but he was arrested and presented for a trial. During his trial, the testimony of the psychologist, who had remained anonymous as a witness, was heard behind closed doors, and it served as the primary evidence against Jim. Instead of presenting his case, he opted to follow the advice of his lawyers, B. Fick and C. Raymakers, and remained silent throughout the trial. This tactic was applied because his legal team believed, with a series of expert witnesses testifying that the victim's death might have been accidental, a conviction was unlikely. However, the court still accused Jim of the murder, looking to sentence him to 12 years in prison for the crime. However, the defense argued that the court had overlooked the scenarios proposed by the experts, and they insisted that inserting or shooting a pen into someone's eye without sedation was impossible. While the court didn't require shooting tests to establish feasibility, the defense sought these tests to prove that using a crossbow effectively wasn't viable. So, considering the defense's request, the court allowed the experiment, and the researchers procured a Barnett Phantom crossbow and conducted experiments at a slaughterhouse. They shot big pens at deceased pigs from point-blank range to see if the result was the same as it has been in Mary's case. However, it turned out quite impossible to shoot a pen through a pig's eye and eye socket, and the researchers also noted that the pens became damaged upon impact with tissue or bone. Strikingly, the pen involved in the Leyden incident showed no signs of damage. Still, this observation was far from intriguing because conducting tests on human tissue would be essential to provide significant evidence. As bizarre as it might have sounded, the court was forced to allow such an experiment on a human head made available somewhere in the Netherlands, enabling the researchers to shoot 3 pens into the eye using the crossbow. Of course, this is a macabre experiment, but wouldn't it be even more macabre to let someone sit for 12 years without conducting these tests? Said one of the individuals related to the case. The initial observation, although potentially unsettling for the defense, revealed that penetrating the eye socket roof was possible. However, other significant observations compensated for this, as the pen disintegrated when it contacted the eye socket. The wider plastic casing slowed down due to the eye socket roof while the ink cartridge propelled through, and the tip momentarily detached from the ink tube. The presence of an air bubble in the ink indicated its removal, and collectively, the pens fired exhibited characteristics similar to rockets with stages, suggesting that relying on a single test might be inadequate. Consequently, the researchers concluded that further investigation by justice was imperative. So, the case was equally weighed from both sides, as some people defended Jim, while other people presented their counter-arguments. Many believed that it was impossible to shoot a pen so deep in the head without causing the slightest bit of damage, not to mention the pen went directly to the eye, instead of wandering anywhere else. While experts raised arguments about the reason why Jim was being held as the perpetrator, his therapist, along with many other people, highlighted the main cause to be his hatred for his mother, who was going through a rough patch in her marriage, affecting the children in between. However, that reason was claimed as baseless, and it was highlighted that no sane person would kill his mother for a reason this small. However, Mary's accident theory still could not be defended properly, as her caution against carrying sharp objects and the depth of the pen's penetration into the head, beyond the skull's protective parts, were significant points that stated otherwise. Typically, during a fall, a portion of the pen would protrude. Additionally, the absence of any indications that Mary had recently used the pen or written anything raised doubts about its purpose. In the end, the case turned to no end, and Jim was released on the basis of insufficient evidence and the support of numerous experts. But was it really an accident or perfectly executed murder? Whatever the case had been, Mary's murder or accident remained one of the most complicated cases in Dutch history.